This is a 2023 Toyota Prius, a new 5th generation of this happy little hybrid. And man, oh man, have things changed. To start, Toyota swapped the 1.8 liter for a 2 liter 4-cylinder engine, which upped the horsepower by more than 60% in the process and vastly improved the styling. I mean, look at this 4th generation car, and now look at this one. Come on. And that's why I really wanted to review this new Prius, because I gotta know, does it drive as good as it looks? But first, let me tell you a few quick facts. The latest Prius is built on the TNGA-C platform, and it not only looks better, it also weighs less, has a lower center of gravity, and is stiffer. And all of those things should improve the way it drives. There are 3 trims: LE, XLE, and limited trims. And the one I'm in is in fact the highest of the 3, the limited trim. However, all 3 are also available as either front or all-wheel drive models. The base price of a Toyota Prius LE front-wheel drive is $28,545. Going with the front-wheel drive version of the Limited, this one here starts at $35,560. And my test car did include a few options, and I'll go over those in just a moment, and cost $37,494. By the way, if you do go with all-wheel drive, that adds $1,400 to the price, regardless of which trim you get. Okay, with that, now's a good time for me to pull over and show you around and inside this car in a bit more detail. For the first time in its 22-year history, the Toyota Prius really catches the eye. It's no longer just the practical or fuel-efficient choice, but something to maybe even desire. Let's take a closer look. To start, you've got this much meaner, more aggressive looking front end, this nice hood just sloping down to this pretty sinister looking face. You've got these narrow headlights that are sharp and just kind of squint-eyed, and then have this like dual kind of surface almost from this clip right here. So you have the main beams here, but it keeps continuing on right here for the daytime running lights. You've also got interesting colors here and this lower grille down here. Also, behind that, you do have front shutters that only open when you need extra cooling. Otherwise, they stay closed to improve your coefficient of drag, which, by the way, is 0.27. Overall, from the front, you can see this is a much different and, in my opinion, much better looking car. But as nice as it is to look at this sloping front hood, I bet you're as curious as I am to see what's underneath. There it is, the transversely mounted 2-liter hybrid engine right there, which cranks out a combined 194 horsepower and at least 152 pound-feet of torque. That is the internal combustion engine and electric hybrid system combined. As I mentioned, it's transversely mounted, so side to side, and I do have to say it is pretty far forward. The center line of the front axle is right about here, behind this protector right here, so most of the engine is indeed in front of the center line of the front axle. But front to rear chassis balance probably wasn't the largest concern for this car. By the way, it might be hard to see, but this says Hybrid Reborn Prius right here. And I'll tell you the thing that caught my eye the most: engine oil, 0W16. Oh man, it's that is a light oil weight right there. Oh, and by the way, windshield washer fluid goes right there. Looking at the 5th generation Prius in profile, you really do get this like futuristic door wedge kind of shape. It starts low and just goes and goes and goes and gets kind of bigger as it goes back. It also gets a little bit wider as it goes back, but this has a 2-inch lower roof line compared to the 4th generation Prius. It is a lot lower than it used to be. Speaking of, I'll go ahead and put the dimensions up on the screen right now so you can check that out, and let you know that I have a lot more information in the description. But let's just take a look at the shape one more time. It is this really interesting, extremely steeply raked windshield right here. The windshield starts here to here. That is massively long piece of glass, but it's just so cantilevered over towards the horizontal. So you really get this stretched out look that way. Plus, because this is the limited model, we have the standard fixed roof glass right there. It is nice that we have this black side view mirror cover. It's a nice contrast to what Toyota calls cutting edge paint, what I would call silver. And some interesting curves down here. You can look along here. There's this contrasting line that kind of cuts into the body here, but then kind of slopes out and gets wider as it gets to the rear axle. It's a really interesting shape. I mentioned the wheels. Well, with the LEs, you get 17-inch wheels. With the XLE and the limited trims, you get 19-inch wheels. And they fill the wheel well nicely, I would say. Now, these are pretty darn narrow. 195 50 R19. But, you know, in terms of the look of the car and profile, it fits the car nicely, I think. And I think it's a nice design as well, with this polished metal and the darker gray mixed in between. And yeah, of course, the back wheel is the same width and size as the front. Looking at the car from the back, you can see right away that this is a very, very different shape from before. Also, it is 1 inch wider than it used to be. I also think that this is a nice touch, having this taillight beam go right across the entire width of the car. They are not at all ashamed to tell you that it is a Prius here. And then you've got, just like the front, this really steeply raked piece of glass for the rear windshield. You do have these little heat elements in here to defrost, and then right at the base, it says Prius right there. That's a fun little touch. Plus, I think this is a cool little element here, how the taillights just kind of like fade into the bottom like that. Overall, this is a much, much better looking car than before, and I think it shows front, middle, and back. And no pet peeves to worry about here. The one and only tailpipe is hidden right there, just as it should be. You get 20 cubic feet of storage behind the second row, and this nice little privacy panel right here. If you get the LE trimmed Prius, you actually get a bit more space. You get almost 24 cubic feet of storage instead of 20. And yes, if you need more than 20 cubic feet of storage and don't need to carry passengers in back, that is easy to do. Pull a couple levers and you get more than 20 cubic feet of storage. Toyota doesn't say, but you know, it's more. And plenty of room for two as well. All right, let's check out the inside. Oh, and that's fun. This folds in half. The rear door handle is tucked away up here. The seat bottoms do look a touch on the low side, but let's give it a try. I am 5'11" or 181 centimeters tall, and I do have some knee room, about 2 inches, I would say. And yes, the seat bottoms are on the low side, so I do not have a ton of thigh support, and I do also have a more than 90-degree bend in my knees. But I do have a decent amount of headroom, and that's despite having this big piece of glass for the roof, and that kind of like forces the ceiling down just a little bit. And there are also a couple of luxuries in here. We've got heated seats for the outer two passengers back here, and that is a $350 standalone option. But we also have 2 USB ports down there, and those come standard. And of course, if there's only 2 of us back here, we also have an armrest with cup holders. So hey, life is good. Even as you open the door, you can see just how long this windshield is, because it's just kind of baked into this A-pillar right here that just goes and goes and goes. You do get the typical controls on the door right here, but you also get 2-position seat memory as well. The seat is a power adjusting seat, and that does include lumbar support as well. And we actually have several controls to the left of the steering wheel. Down low, we've got the fuel door and the hatch release, and higher we have some more of the typical controls you see, including the button for, yes, we do have a heated steering wheel back here. Courtesy of this heavily sloped front windshield, you can see it just in the angle of the A-pillar right here, but look how far away the instrument cluster screen is to the wheel. So your steering wheel, and then like a good 18 inches back to the fully digital instrument cluster. That is a 7-inch fully digital instrument cluster right there. Next to that, we have the 12.3-inch center console touchscreen right there. This is the larger of two screens available on the Prius. If you get an LE, you get an 8-inch screen. If you get an XLE, you get an 8-inch screen, but you can option for this larger screen. Just beneath that is the start-stop button. And there is the instrument cluster lit up. The steering wheel itself has a pretty darn thick rim, and it is a pretty small steering wheel, it must be said. You do also have several controls for cruise control and things like that over here, and different media options and adjustments over here. You do have a couple of different choices for screens with this button. Here you just kind of have like a central speedometer power setup kind of thing, or you can hit the button and get a screen of what the adaptive cruise control sees when it comes to like lane tracing, assist, and things like that, which we'll get to when we get to the highway. And there is the center console touchscreen lit up. Beneath that, we do have a single zone climate control system right there. And because we're in a limited, we get heated and ventilated seats for both front passengers. Heated seats come standard on the XLE trim. Now, regardless of whether you get the 8 or the 12.3-inch screen, you do get wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. And if you get an XLE trim or higher, you also get a Qi wireless charger, and you get it in a clever place. So it's right here next to your Prindle, and it's got these little spring-loaded parts right here, so it kind of holds it in place just like that. Beneath the climate control system, you do get 2 more USB Type-C charge ports right there, as well as your old school standard 12-volt charge port right there. Nice little tray, couple of cup holders. By the way, this tray is easy to remove and clean if you want, and you have a little bit of extra storage down there. Apparently, hashtag hidden compartment. I don't get it. I am old. There is the Prindle right there, and you do have a couple of different controls right there, including EV mode. You can go EV only for short distances in the Prius. You also have an electric park brake, a few drive modes, which we'll talk about in a second, and a way to turn on and off traction control. Also, you have some storage in the lower center console and 2 more USB Type-C ports, 6 in all. Looking up, you have a couple of controls for lights, and here is that fixed glass roof. This is optional in the XLE trim and standard here in the Limited. Now, this particular Prius does have the optional digital rear view mirror for $200. Flip that, and it becomes a screen for a camera back there instead of the mirror. This car also has the Limited Premium package for $1,085, and that gets you the advanced park system, and that will do perpendicular or parallel parking for you, and a panoramic view camera system. So press the button and you have these options right here. It's going through a little display, 360-degree view panoramic system. Lovely. And like I said, we do have drive modes. We have 4 drive modes: custom, sport, normal, and eco. Yeah, sport in a Prius. I'm still getting used to that myself just a little bit. But real quick, with custom, you can adjust that by going to settings, vehicle customize, and custom drive mode. And you can see here, you can adjust powertrain, steering weight, and how well the air conditioning works. Anyway, talking about the drive modes does get me excited to get back to the driving, so let's do that. All right, let's dig into the powertrain. I showed you the 2-liter engine that sits up front, transversely mounted, pretty far forward, it must be said. That's the same engine you get regardless of the trim or whether you get the all-wheel drive system or not. Now, if you do spend $1,400 on all-wheel drive, you do actually get a little bit extra peak overall horsepower, 196 horsepower instead of 194 horsepower. But you know, you get a lot more horsepower than you did in the 2022 model year Prius regardless. The internal combustion engine does ultimately do most of the work, but not by a huge margin, it must be said. It is an Atkinson cycle engine, which means it's a little bit more efficient and has a compression ratio of 14:1, but it actually doesn't. It has an expansion ratio of 14:1, but because the piston starts moving up in its stroke before the valves close, the compression ratio is actually a little bit lower than that. Either way, That helps with the efficiency, and that's still a pretty darn high ratio. It's also an under-square engine, so the stroke is longer than the bore. That makes it harder for the engine to rev, but helps produce a bit more torque. And it makes that tiny touch more torque with regular gasoline, outputting a total of 150 horsepower and 139 pound-feet of torque. The 2-liter internal combustion engine alone already beats the outgoing Toyota Prius by a healthy margin, and we have not yet gotten to the 2 electric motors that are mounted to the engine via a planetary gear set. One of those motors just focuses on recovering energy when you're slowing down, but the other one does help drive the front wheels, and on its own makes 111 horsepower and 152 pound-feet of torque. Toyota does not give a combined torque number. I know that it's more than 152 pound-feet, but I do not know by how much, and that's because you can't just add the 2 peak outputs together. Still, 194 horsepower for something this size is really pretty healthy. Both electric motors do aid in energy recovery when you're slowing down, and that is charging a lithium-ion battery pack. It is a 222-volt lithium-ion pack. If you get the all-wheel drive Prius, there is a 3rd motor attached to the rear axle. There's no drive shaft. That motor on its own has 40 horsepower and 62 pound-feet of torque. It does also add more than 100 pounds to the weight of the Prius. And actually, that depends on the trim you get. But all in all those things considered, all those numbers and facts and figures, ultimately what matters is we have a much more engaging, playful, respectable powertrain here. No, this is not some rocket ship all of a sudden, but if you floor the accelerator, you get a response, and you actually get pretty decent pull. That's not blowing my socks off, but it's healthy. It's certainly not making me want for power like the old Priuses did often, to be honest. Plus, you do get noticeable differences when you change the drive modes. That was in the normal drive mode. If I put it to the sport drive mode and hit the accelerator again, it's pretty fast reacting. And yeah, we get that full power a little bit faster, and we get moving a little faster. It's pretty respectable in its responsiveness. Now, conversely, if you go to Eco and floor the throttle again, it's a lot slower to build up the speed, but it does still eventually get there. You just have a lot more progression in the pedal travel when you're in the eco driving mode. So if you're interested in saving as much fuel as possible, that mode is probably the way to go. And if you are that type of person, you might be encouraged to know that you can get up to 57 miles to the gallon combined in the front wheel drive Prius. That is, of course, the LE trim, which has the smaller 17-inch wheels and less equipment, so it weighs a bit less and things like that. But even this limited trim here gets 52 miles to the gallon. If you do go with the all-wheel drive models, added weight, etc., that does drop the fuel economy a little bit, but the all-wheel drive version of the limited trim Prius still gets 49 miles to the gallon. Pretty good. But while fuel economy is important, especially in something like this, it's not as much fun as accelerating. 60% more power than before? Yeah, definitely had to test the acceleration. Let me show you that right now. All right, everybody, time for an acceleration test in this 5th generation, much more powerful, but still not very powerful, Toyota Prius. I do have it in the sport driving mode, and I do have traction and stability control totally off, so if there is any wheel slip, it will be allowed. All right, let's see how it goes. Okay, coming to a complete stop. Foot on the brake, foot on the gas. Okay, foot off the brake. Okay. So no wheel spin of any kind, but pretty decent pull. That's not bad. That is really not bad. This little Prius has some hustle. I'm shocked. Look at my face. Listen to the octave of my voice. Toyota says 0 to 60 in 7.2 seconds, which is 2.6 seconds faster than the outgoing Prius model. That is a massive difference. And if you get the all-wheel drive model, it's 7 seconds flat, 0.2 of a second better. Pretty darn good. And a huge amount better than before. Yeah, good acceleration. I know, it's a Prius. It's still a Prius. It's a better looking Prius, but it's still a Prius. But it's a much better looking Prius, and it's got the new structure, and it's got more horsepower. So I was curious, how does this car handle? Time for a handling test in this Toyota Prius, because why not? I do once again have it in the sport driving mode, and that does not only play with the powertrain, it does actually increase the steering weight a little bit. And I do also, once again, have the traction and stability control off, but it's still a Prius. Let's see how it goes. Yeah, I mean, come on. It's not fast, but it's respectable acceleration. Not a lot of grip, but not that much body roll either, actually. And actually, the steering rack was reasonably fast, considering that. I had more response from the front end than I expected. Yeah, emphasis on not a lot of grip. Okay, even in the sport driving mode, steering is pretty light. Okay. So there's a lot of understeer. Steering is awfully light, but front end, it's a pretty quick steering rack, so it doesn't take a lot of lock to get this car turned. Body control is actually pretty okay. That's partially because we don't have a lot of grip, so there's not a lot of G's the body has to resist so much laterally. But I mean, honestly, it's completely competent. It's completely respectable considering what it is. So, given the pretty low expectations I had, yeah, it's not a bad handler. It's pretty okay. Okay, back to more of the prime use of this car. How does it ride? How does it feel on the road? Well, generally speaking, it feels really good. It has a good solid structure. I actually really like this small radius, small diameter steering wheel to work with here. Generally, the ride is compliant. It goes over bumps smoothly and things like that. And it has a lot of creature comforts. Heated seats, ventilated seats, heated steering wheel, all those types of things to keep you warm and cool when you need to stay warm and cool. Plus, cool features with the big 12.3-inch center console touchscreen. And those things can be useful on roads like this and on the interstate. I did test it there as well. Let me show you that. All right, everybody, time for a quick stint on the interstate. I do have the Prius back in the normal driving mode, and yes, I did turn on stability control again. We do have Toyota Safety Sense 3.0, and that includes a lot of the driving aids that you'd come to expect these days, including one of my favorites, lane tracing assist. It works really well in Toyota and Lexus products, so we'll see if that continues to be true here in this Prius, as well as check out things like wind noise and road noise and stuff like that. Okay, cruise control is set. I do have it set at 80 miles an hour to go with traffic, and we are coming up on a subtle curve, so I'll go ahead and take my hands off the wheel. And yeah, sure enough, lane tracing assist works really well. We're staying right and centered in the lane as we go around this subtle curve, and yeah, does its job just like it should. More fundamentally, the powertrain works really well. There's no wanting for power, strangely enough, in a Prius. That has been a traditional Prius trait, for me at least. But when it comes to the other things, wind noise, road noise, cabin isolation, that kind of thing, it's only so-so. You can feel its not terribly expensive car roots here, this compact car roots. there is a fair amount of wind noise being let in through the cabin. There's not that much sound insulation to dampen that stuff out. Road noise, on the other hand, is pretty good. That's not a significant part of this. And, you know, the ride is pretty good. It's actually a tiny touch stiffer than I would expect. It's generally soft and compliant, but in those sharp heaves in the road that you get in expansion joints, you do get a bit of a little shock when you get over those. But overall, you do get fantastic highway fuel economy, of course, and you do have a lot of comforts in terms of this 12.3-inch center console touchscreen that has a lot of stuff, like I haven't showed you yet. Hey, Toyota.
How can I help you?
Set the temperature to 72 degrees.
Setting the driver's temperature to 72 degrees.
And you do also have this nice graphic here, I'll show you now, which gives you a good understanding of what the Prius sees on the road as you're driving down the road. So yeah, all in all, a perfectly reasonable highway cruiser. So, what do we think of this 5th generation Toyota Prius? It's really good. It's genuinely a much better car. Not hybrid, not efficiency, not green, just a car. You have good comfort in the seats, you have good features, you have a great expansive view out onto the road, you have very respectable styling, something you can hold your head high up with that, and you have perfectly reasonable power to get onto the interstate, get moving around town, all those types of things. And I didn't mention it earlier, but Toyota also did good work to improve the integration of the brakes. So we still have mechanical brakes if you really need to stop. But light braking is actually the electric motors absorbing energy to charge the battery pack. The transition between the mechanical brakes and that actuation of recovering energy is a lot smoother than Priuses of the past. So that just adds to it. It just feels like a good, normal car. And I think that's really what we should be striving for, is good feel, period. Not good feel for a hybrid, for a this, for a that. Now, it definitely still is a hybrid. It still has a lot of hybrid personality, but clearly, Toyota has made improvements to the Prius throughout its 22 years, and this time especially was truly transformative in a way that I think they can be very, very proud of. I'm Robin Warner. Thank you for watching. And if you like this video, please show me by giving it a thumbs up. Doing so helps me out a lot, and I would really appreciate it. Also, I do have a new website. It's called viewsonvehicles.com. And there I cover vehicle reviews, car news, new car reveals, things like that. Please do check that out. I'd appreciate that as well. Also, if you're interested in efficient cars but want to take it to the next step and go full EV, I did recently review the Hyundai Ioniq 6. That is a full EV sedan from Hyundai. It's really cool. It's definitely worth checking out. And from there, I've reviewed a whole bunch of stuff by now. Something is going to pop up on the screen next to me. Hopefully it's something you're interested in. And if you do end up watching it, I definitely hope you like it. Okay, goodbye for now.